Just wanted to start off briefly with giving my condolences to Woodsy's family, and everyone on the call that was close with Woodsy. I can't remember Woodsy not being around in all my time here. Just a fantastic human being, and someone that would always make me laugh. But just he loved our team, and just wanted to give my condolences. Also, just wanted to thank Rob Vanstone for his story yesterday. I think probably everyone's was read it, but I want to just reach out to Rob and say appreciate you sharing your story yesterday, Rob. I know it takes a lot to share that, and we appreciate you sharing that with us. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any questions that you have.
Jeremy, Derek Taylor, how do you feel about where you stand heading into Sunday's period where your guys can now talk to other teams?
I feel pretty good, Derek. I think like most years, you always go into free agency with some guys that you don't expect to get back. It's not very much like any other year where you'll always have some guys that will go into free agency. But overall, we feel pretty good about it. We've really tackled the list of free agents that we had this year. So overall, we feel good with it. Like most years, you're probably not going to get everyone back that you like, but that's just the reality of pro sports.
What have negotiations been like this year versus other free agent years?
I think just the biggest difference is just the beginning of it. To be honest, it has been different when we started free agency, or when we were allowed to start re-signing our players. The first thing that we did is we actually approached all of our veteran players and asked them to restructure their contracts to help us with the pending free agents. So we approached pretty much every one of our veterans that were under contract past 2020 and asked them to restructure their contract and take less, to be honest. And so that was something that was different, something that we don't usually do. And I just, really proud of all of our players that stepped up in that time, and they're all committed to being part of our team. They all stepped up. They understood the environment that we're dealing with, and super proud of those guys for all pitching in. So that was a little bit different. And then from there, it's really kind of just like a normal year where you're approaching your free agents and giving them their your plan for them on your team, and then also reaching out, talking to their agents about contracts as well.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Jeremy, can you provide an update on kind of the free agents who are still out there, like Solomon Elmimian, Charleston Hughes, Cam Judge? What's kind of their status right now?
Let's see here. I guess we'll go one at a time there. So we've had discussions with Solomon's with his agent. Again, won't go into too much detail with that. Just understanding that the fact that you're not going to get every player back every year for various reasons. But we have talked to every one of our free agents, as you would expect, and everyone has different situations. Cam Judge is actually pursuing some NFL opportunities currently. Still is planning on working out for an NFL team. We've had constant communications with his agent throughout this whole process. We'll continue to do that. And then in Charleston, Charleston and I have met numerous times to discuss the possibility of bringing him back. We obviously have not reached an agreement this time, but we've continued with those discussions.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe John Ryan and Brett Lothar haven't opted back into their contracts yet. What's going on there?
Yeah, so Brett is also the kind of the same boat as Cam, where he's wants to explore NFL opportunities and really wants to exhaust those opportunities. We've had conversations with him about it and respect his decision, that he's wanting to see that through, and put his best foot forward to it. A lot of times, we don't want to push our players to sign back with us unless they're committed with both feet. And right now, Brett really wants to see that through. So he's got some plans on how he's going to approach that. And I don't want to speak for him, but we'll continue to monitor that and talk to him. And we're still in discussions with John. We spoke to his agent just recently, and we're continuing those discussions with John. Indications are that he wants to continue to play and we'd like to have him back if possible.
And you have previously said that you're not going to be able to spend to the cap. It's going to be less spending this year. I guess, do you have a lot of room to sign free agents, or do you expect to be kind of quiet once it does open up?
I think that's going to depend on how everything shakes down with our guys. We have offers to a couple of our guys still that are on the table, and that we're waiting for them to decide whether they want to come back to our team or not. And then if those don't happen, then we could be a little more active than we expect. But in general, I would say that we're not going to be overly active in free agency.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Jeremy, Taylor Shire here. I would love to ask who your free agent targets are, but instead I will ask what positions you are targeting when it does open.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking, Tyler, but it wouldn't be very very good for me to start telling everyone what we're looking for in free agency. But look, we'll just wait until we get into free agency and we'll go through the process and see where we're at with a couple of our guys, and then that answer will be answered in the next couple days. But we'll hold that to ourselves of any potential positions or players that we're targeting.
Do young guys in this league, guys who have 1 or 2 years of experience who are free agents, become almost more valuable than some of the older veterans because of their potential and their lower salary, if that makes sense?
I guess that could be true in any year, to be honest with you. I wouldn't read too much into that. I think that it's going to be not much different, in my opinion, than any other free agency period. If you want a player and he's a little bit older, you'll offer him a contract, and I think it would be more of whether that veteran player would think that that's what he wants to play for anymore. Maybe that would come into a factor, but I don't think there's too much into that right now.
And are you basically going off 2019 at this point? Can you put any stock into the last year, whether a guy has, bulked up off the field or sped up? Like, are some of these guys sending you film, like current guys that you have sending you film? And are you looking at anything over the last year?
Well, all you can go through from game tape is from 2019. You don't have a choice to do that. And it'd be awful difficult for us to ask pending free agents or your current players to send you videotape of them, what they currently look like. So you're trying to monitor as best as possible, but look, it's professional football, and these guys know that they have to be in good shape, and if they're not in good shape, then they don't make the team. So I don't think there's a whole big worry behind that. It does play in your mind a little bit of whether a year off is good for a player, or if it's not good for a player. You have to understand too, a lot of the American players that we usually get, by the time they decide to come to play in the CFL, not all of them, but some of them have been out of football for a couple of years too. So it's not something that's super uncommon as far as what we usually deal with.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy. Has every player that you've extended an offer to in free agency had to, or have you offered them a decreased salary compared to previous years, or maybe what they should be worth this year?
All of our players that have re-signed have come back for a reduction in salary, with the exception of a few guys that would be coming off of rookie contracts. I don't think it's appropriate for some of our guys that were coming off of rookie contracts to take pay reductions, but the majority of the veteran players, so I wouldn't put everyone in that bubble, but the majority of our veteran players have had to take pay reductions.
due to that, has that prevented in some of re-signing some contracts?
Hard to tell. I can't really speak for the players if that's prevented them from not saying. We only have a few guys left, but I can't speak for them whether that's the deciding factor on whether they're coming back or not. I think that would be a question to ask them after they've gone through it.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy.
You bet.
Jeremy, those reductions, did you have a way you were going to approach it, like blanket, I'd like everybody to take this, or was that case by case?
I think everyone's in a different situation, and I think we're getting caught up on the reductions, and it's different than any other year. But I think it's different for different players in some cases. If you had a player that wasn't making a big salary, it's hard for you to go and ask a player like that to take a big reduction. So it's not exactly the same for everyone. We tried to be as fair as possible and as thoughtful as possible when we approached our players, knowing that everyone was going to have to pitch in.
Can I ask you, releasing Kenny Stafford, what led to that decision?
Well, we had a considerable amount of wide receiver free agents, and once we were able to get Shaq and Swerve and Jordan back, we feel very strongly about some of the young receivers that we're bringing into camp, and really just thought that at that point that we weren't going to offer them a contract back just because of the competition that we have coming in at receiver. And so once we talked to Kenny about that, or once I talked to Kenny about that, he asked if he could be released, knowing that we weren't going to offer him a contract so that he could seek other employment. And that's why we decided to release him.
We've been speculating about what young American talent you might like at receiver. Can you share with us who we may not know who might make an impact in 21? Or
yeah, I think there's it's a good group of young receivers that we have coming in. I also want to point out to a couple of the guys that we had here last year for most of the year with Paul McRoberts, who did a nice job with us last year on the practice roster, and also Carlos Henderson that was here for last season, or I should say the 2019 season. So. It was a good year for us as far as injuries at receiver. We didn't have a lot of injuries at receiver, so they didn't get an opportunity to play. But we feel very good about them. And then we signed a good group coming in from last year, or into last year's class that hadn't made it here because of the season not happening. Rashad Green. This year we signed, just yesterday we signed Artavius Scott, who's a highly productive receiver in college and has a great pedigree, and we're excited about him. Sharon Peak, who was a teammate of his. Really, I can go down the list of guys, and there's a couple more in there that we feel highly of too. So it's just a matter of which couple of those guys are going to step out of the group, but we feel good about all of them.
How far along are you in thoughts of, okay, well, who is a starter, and how does the ratio change from last season, from 2019?
As far as the ratio, I think you're just looking at it as the ratio's intact, and obviously a big piece of that is Cam Judge, right? So you have to be prepared for Cam to come back, but you also have to be prepared as if he isn't coming back. So we've had discussion. We've got some flexibility on our roster if we have to change the ratio. Right now, we'd hope that we could still stay the same. We also feel good about some of our younger linebackers too. But we're prepared either way. We've got some options that we could do. We're pretty deep at Canadian receiver as well, so we have an option to add one there. Not saying that's the case, but as right now, DT is our anticipation is that we would stay the same. But it all would depend on how we come out, with Cam and through free agency.
I have a million more questions, but I'll stop for now.
What's up with John Ryan? Did you have something in his status right now?
Well, I don't know if Murray was maybe late to the call here or not, but
Yeah, I'm doing something else here. Maybe if I missed that part, I apologize.
Yeah, it's okay. John, we've had discussion with John. He's indicated that he wants to continue to play. And I don't want to speak for John. He did have a little bit of NFL interest going through the season, which is something I'm sure that he'll make sure is exhausted before he decides whether he's coming back to the CFL. And obviously we've reached out to him and let him know that we'd like to have him back. So we've had some discussions recently with his agent.
There's not a lot of punters or kickers in free agency except for one right now. Is that kind of a position of concern to fill through free agency, or you look maybe another way?
Well, obviously when there's only when you don't have your kicker and punter under contract, and free agency has one kicker, obviously that would be a little bit of a concern. But we still have the draft in front of us, and not only just the CFL draft, but also the global draft that everyone tends to forget about.
There's also, you don't have any of the starters back from linebacker last year. That looks to be a pretty deep field in free agency. Can that be filled for that group? I know it's putting you in.
I think everyone needs to understand that you only have so much to work with within your cap, and every year you have to make decisions on certain positions, and you have to make it work within the structure that you have. And so I think there is some potential linebackers that are in free agency, but again, I'll reiterate that we feel really good about some of the young players that we've been able to sign. This year is a little bit different than most years, where we've had 2 years of scouting and recruiting our players, and so I think we'll have some talented players that will be in the mix as well.
Because you had the whole starters on the defensive backfield back. Was that the position you looked at and kind of targeted to get them all back as free agents, or is that just the way it worked out?
We definitely have a plan in place when you go into free agency. But you can't control when everyone's going to sign. You can't control whether it's going to be offensive guys first or defensive guys first. So we targeted the guys that we wanted to get back. We've offered them contract, negotiated those contracts, and the vast majority of the players that were committed to coming back have come back. So we'll continue to work through that. It was just a year where, coming into last year, if you'll remember, we knew we were going to have a new Sam linebacker already, and then this year with Cam exhausting some NFL opportunities, there's that's just the position where there's going to be there's not our guys back that are on paper right now. They're not back, so we'll continue to work on that, and obviously we're aware of the situation our roster's in.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Jeremy, thanks so much for your comments at the outset, and for remembering Woodsy. That's really kind of you. As far as Solomon Elamimian and Charleston Hughes, how would you evaluate the likelihood in each case of either player returning?
I wouldn't I wouldn't anticipate that we'd have them both back. Again, I don't want to get too detailed on where we are, but they're just like any other year. We're going to get some of our players back, and every year we're not going to get all of our free agents back. I think in some cases you wish you can just bring the team back from where you were, but that's not the reality of the environment that we're in, and we have to make some decisions, right? So as far with Charleston, I'd say that the conversation was ongoing up until earlier this week, and which is the last time we spoke. And again, it's really has to be a mutual agreement where the team has to offer a contract, and the player has to want to be back with your organization. So we'll continue to monitor that, and we'll keep working through it.
How much of a factor is age? I mean, you played into your mid-30s as well, so you'd have some insights into what it's like for a player at that juncture of his career. How much do you factor in the fact that Charleston is 37 and that Solomon will be 35 by the time the season's over?
Well, I think you don't want to get in a situation where your team becomes old all at one time, because then that could be difficult. But you also you want to make sure that you have a good evaluation on whether you think the player will continue to be a successful player. I mean, let's face the facts. You're talking about, 2 Hall of Fame players, right? So they've proven in the past that they've been very good players, right? So it's the crystal ball question of, when will plays start to deteriorate at what age. So it always is a concern when we look at our roster. We're always aware of that. But let's face it, those guys that we're talking about have been successful for a reason, and they also have, great value in your locker room as well, because their leadership is hard to replace in a lot of cases. So, sorry if I'm going around the question a little bit, but it is something that we consider.
How much tougher is it, Jeremy, to make that call when you're looking back 2 years now? So suddenly Charleston goes from 35 to 37, and Solomon goes from 33 to 35. There's no recent evidence, but the clock keeps ticking.
Yeah, either way, right, Rob? There's no evidence either way, right? So again, that's something that you have to think about is, did the year off do him? Was it good for him, or was it bad for him, or was it just a wash, right? So those are things that you do have to try to think about. I wish I had the perfect answer that I could tell you. I guess you can look at the players and see how well they work in the off season, how they prepare their bodies. But in these cases, these guys have played a long time already, so they know what they need to do with their body. So we talk about it, we consider it. It does come into a factor somewhat when you're talking about players that are getting towards the end of their career.
One more, if I may. There's 6 quarterbacks under contract. Is that a number that you would be prepared to go into camp with? It seems like that's a little high for a typical off season.
Yeah, Rob, for that's going to depend on where we're at as far as how many players we're going to bring to training camp. So if the numbers stay the same, where we're anticipating for the amount of numbers we'll have, then there's a strong chance that that's what we'll bring. And just I know how it's been done in the past, and for me, it's just such an important piece to our team that I think that we should try to bring as many as we can. This is a little different off season than normal, Rob, and usually what happens is we usually have a mini camp, or we have workouts during the off season that we can evaluate the quarterbacks. So you usually get a look at them. In most cases, you can get a good look at them in person to see what you think. And in this case, with us not having those workouts or mini camps, it's maybe changed the approach a little bit for us.
Do you have a philosophy on what you'd like to do roster-wise with quarterbacks? There's no longer the mandate that you have to dress 3, but there's still that prerogative if you want to exercise it. Would you plan to dress 3 even though it's no longer required?
Yeah, I think I'll leave that question to Dickie. We've talked about it briefly in conversation, and obviously with the change, we'll get more in depth with it. But nothing solidified on the answer to that question yet, Rob, about how we'll exactly approach our QBs.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
No problem.
Jeremy, how do you feel about the offensive line depth, especially after Dakota signed with the 49ers for next season?
Yeah, obviously I'm a little biased, but it's an important part of our team. And you always want good depth at that position, and with your Canadians in particular. And so you're always making sure that you want to, first of all, have a good group that's protecting your franchise quarterback, or any of your quarterbacks for that much. And so how concerned I am. I feel good about some of the younger guys that we have, and some of the guys that are probably hoping to get an opportunity. Obviously, we drafted Matlin in the first round last year, and we also have a draft that's in front of us where we have the second pick overall as well that we could help out with that. So we're always, like any year, we're always concerned about our depth on the O-line.
Jeremy, do you envision Jordan Williams Lambert playing outside like he did in 19 or inside like he did in 2018?
Well, I can tell you how I envision him, but it wouldn't be the right thing to tell Jason Moss where he should play the players. But I think we're envisioning him to play inside, and again, I'll leave that to Jason and Coach Dickey on where they want to play the players, and where they'll sit. Again, with a new offensive coordinator, you'll probably see different approaches and a different style when you have a new offensive coordinator. So we're just trying to do our best to put the best group in front of him and give him a lot of flexibility with how he wants to set up the receiving core.
As an interested observer, what are you curious to see about this upcoming free agent period? What are you curious to see about the other teams and how it plays out?
I think every free agency you'll look at it. I mean, we dive into every team's rosters pretty extensively just to try to, I guess, forecast what what other teams may be looking for in free agency, or where they have some holes, or you can also follow where they're at with signing their own free agents back. So there's probably, to be honest, there's probably interesting stories on every single team on how their approach is, and until we get into the period where you can talk to the free agents, you don't really know 100%. If those players have been offered contracts back or if they're just going in a different direction. But usually at this time of the year, you can kind of predict and say, okay, it looks like this team will have interest in this specific position, and you can come up with a good sense of where guys may land, or where you think would be a good fit. But I'm going to be honest, DT, I'm most concerned about how ours is going to end up. So. But we do pay a lot of attention and try to predict the market. You spend a lot of time looking at everyone's roster and seeing where, maybe they have voids, or maybe they lost a guy to the NFL, or maybe they're trying to improve in a certain area. And you also get some of that through talking with some of the agents.
Can you spoiler alert us, just naming a team you're like, okay, you guys should be watching this team. I think this might be interesting.
I think when the teams that you would want to watch are the teams that have the majority of free agents, because you have to understand, if they haven't signed a lot of their players back, there's probably more to it than they just haven't been successful signing their free agents back. I think you should look at it and say that they're gonna look at this and maybe make some changes to their roster that they didn't do last year. And if you look at some teams that if they've changed coaches, or if they've changed general managers, those are the teams that you can see a change in philosophy happening. So those are the teams that were probably going to be some ones that you could watch, and they're probably going to change some things around. It's usually what happens when there's a change at the general manager or head coach spot.
Thank you.
Sorry, DT, you're always trying to get specific good stuff, and I can't really give you much.
Someday, 20 years from now, I'm going to nail you down on one. It'll be great, and I'll love it.
Hey, Jo, how's it been the second year of the negotiation windows? How has it impacted free agency? You went through it last year. You got a second year coming now. Is it a good idea? I think.
Yeah, I didn't mind it much last year, Murray, to be honest. It was nice to be able to talk openly with agents and players, and then also even just to get to reach out to players. Look, we would have talked to players last year in that open window that we didn't sign as free agents. So you do get to talk personally with some of those guys that you normally wouldn't get used to, or used to getting talked to. And I would probably a better question for the players on what they think the free agent period. But overall, we haven't got into it yet for this year, Murray, but for last year's, I think I think it was a decent idea for to add that in, so you had the opportunity to talk to the players personally, and then at the end of it, you have the opportunity to talk to anyone that's on your team again, obviously, and see if there was any offers from other teams.